an all-time classic, one on everyone's top 10 list, Spa-Francorchamps this weekend. Welcome back, everyone, to the Off Camber podcast. The F1 hiatus is over again, and I've been on a bit of a break, and I didn't get out the Silverstone review, unfortunately, but I'm super keen to get back into it. F1 2025 Part 2, we are back, and super keen. Super excited for this weekend. We've got a sprint weekend to kick off the second half of the season, and one of the most beloved historical circuits in Formula One, and the season's definitely heating up. So we're not, a lot of years in F1 of previous have been sort of closed off by now. We get to the halfway point, we know what's happening. This year, we don't. We still have a good title fight for the Drivers' Championship. We don't have a Constructors' fight, but we've got a P2 Constructors fight, and then we've got the awesome midfield battle going on between the midfield teams. So we'll discuss that later, but let's get straight into our preview rituals. Okay, so the track rating for me personally, Spa is a 9 out of 10. It's definitely one of the best tracks on the calendar, and I think it's always deserving of a spot on the F1 calendar, even if it doesn't always necessarily provide F1's F1 cars good racing, right? Because we know that it definitely is full of some of those high to medium speed corners that this generation of car do still struggle to follow through. So won't always provide good racing, but just basis on it's Spa. It is definitely just one of the best tracks, and everyone recognizes this track. If you know that people know straights like Camel Straight, La Source, corner names, right? Rouge, one of the most famous corners in the world. Anyone who follows motorsport knows this track and knows its layout. And has probably played it in some form of video game. I know I've put a lot of hours into it. I think a lot of people have. So I think it's one that is always going to be deserving of a spot in the calendar. So 9 out of 10 for me. It's one of the classics. It also has its own microclimate, as we've seen over the years. And we are scheduled for some rain on the Sunday. So hopefully, being a sprint, though, we get some different weather on the Saturday and the Sunday. That would be awesome. But I do know Google is saying weather on the Sunday. So hopefully, at least we get a race, because we have had years in the past where there has been no race at all. And especially in Australia, when you're bloody waiting around till 2 a.m. and then it gets called off, it is disappointing. So hopefully we get racing, and it should be good. Last year, we'll talk about last year quickly. This was the famous Mercedes 1-2 that got torn down by Russell's car being underweight in the end. Finished across the line first, P1, Hamilton closely followed by Piastri. And afterwards, it might not have been his car was underweight. Maybe it was the plank where one of those two, Russell gets disqualified, and Hamilton's gifted the win. He did stand on the podium that day on the top spot, but he ended up losing the win due to those reasons. So, and if you remember last time, which we will talk about when we talk about the tyres, this one last year, Russell actually used the one stop, which we saw a few times last season. We know Leclerc did it to Piastri at Monza, and this was another one of those examples, and they are doing something about that, which we'll talk about, which is very, very interesting. This was the race where Russell came through with the one stopper, so it looked like Hamilton was controlling the race the whole time. We got a dry race. It was wet before, and we got a dry race, which we were lucky to have. Hamilton was dominating, sort of looking like it was under control, and then Russell just doesn't fit. And it was the exact same thing that Leclerc did at Monza. So I thought that was interesting, but they have changed some things to potentially neglect that from happening. But without further ado, let's get into the predictions. So, my usual shitters. I think this is a good combination, though. We've got Russell on pole, okay? I think is He's obviously had that amazing qualifying result in 2021. I think he's performing phenomenally at the moment, and I think he's going to be good at this track. So he's going to get the pole position. The winner is going to be Oscar Piastri. I'm back in the Aussie again. I think McLaren will be the dominant car. I mean, this track suits. I feel like this track suits their car. I mean, there's a lot of corners that require good drive out of the turn, which I feel like the McLaren excels at. Not as many heavy braking zones, which they can be a bit vulnerable at, especially Norris without that feeling in the front end of the car. So I think Spa is one of those ones for them where it's a bit of everything. And overall, the McLaren seems to be the best car. So I think they're going to thrive there. And like we've seen over the races recently, even if they don't necessarily have the fastest car over one lap, that tyre wear is just such a big advantage that they can just run around people in the race. So the win is going to be Piastri. Class drive is going to be Hadjar for this one. He's just been performing so well this season. I did have him for run wide, so I'm feeling bad for him, but I feel like he's going to have a good weekend. Lawson challenging him, so I feel like Hadjar is going to have to up his game, right? So it's going to bring a good performance out of him, and that's why I've gone Hadjar for class drive. And they're in run wide. Alexander Albon, obviously I'm not hoping a bad weekend because I do want Williams to do well. I think that they've been down recently, and they're losing their edge on that midfield gap, which they had, and Sauber is closing that gap. So hopefully Williams can get a good result, but I just think they're not there yet. They've had a lot of issues with the car, with the cooling of the car, which didn't seem to be, their fix didn't seem to put them in a better place at Silverstone. So we'll see what happens. But it looks like the other teams are sort of catching up to them. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see, and we'll watch out for Albon to see how he does, because it's going to be very, very interesting. All right, so those are the predictions. Let's move on to the tyres now. This is what I was talking about before with how we're probably not going to see a one-stopper, right? We know that the C1 tyre this year has been absolutely useless, right? We know that it lasts a bloody long time, but it's not going to provide any pace, right? So I can't remember the last time we've had a combination like this. So we've got the C1 as the hard, the C3 as the medium, and the C4 as the soft. So we're going softer on the compound, but the hardest is remaining the same. So I get the feeling that they're trying to stop that hard tire use because it's probably a fair bit slower than the C2 tire, which is why we're not seeing the C2. So we're just getting the C1, which is going to be slower. Yeah, it'll last, but I don't think that the likes of George Russell or the Clerks are going to be able to extract enough pace to do a one-stop undercut and win the race from there. Yeah. So the C1, C3, and C4 is probably going to try and push the teams and drivers into that two-stop strategy. And I think that's a good thing, but at the same time, I think it's exciting to have the option of a one-stop. We say, so-and-so might try and pull off a one-stop, and that in the end makes the race a hell of a lot more interesting, because sometimes, especially when the teams are in line of stern, like you've got a teammate behind you or a teammate in front of you, you can use those teammates to sort of control the pace of the cars around you and find gaps. So it makes it easier to do those two stops. Whereas if you have someone trying to do a desperate one stop, there's not as much preventing him from doing that. So I don't know. We'll see how it pans out. It could be good, but I think it's going to probably force everyone into doing that two-stop strategy. So it's going to be interesting to see. But then again, I mean, as we know, if the weather's going to be shit anyway, it's not going to matter, because it's just going to be a wet race. So we'll see what happens there, because we know Spa, the microclimate's real. So we'll see what happens there. And then the other thing we want to discuss quickly is it's a sprint weekend. So there's been a few things that I've been seeing on the internet about this being a sprint weekend. And look, I think it's not necessarily... Like, I think for me personally, I'll always take a sprint weekend. People complain about it being like a precursor for the race because it's essentially just, a shortened race. So we're sort of seeing what we're going to expect on Sunday. But I feel like a lot of the times the sprint isn't that. And we find that different drivers flourish. Like, for example, in China this year, Hamilton wins the sprint race, but they were nowhere in the main race. So it's more so drivers taking advantage of a shorter stint, stuff like that, that's going to enable them to get a different result. And I personally don't think it's a bad thing. I think more racing on the weekend is a good thing. I know the teams probably don't like it as much, but as a fan, we love just seeing more racing. So me personally, I like it. And at Spa, I'm happy with that. And especially given the weather situation, like if it's going to be different, that's even better. I'm copping that. Like that's a dub. That's a dub for me. So my opinion is, yes, the sprint's a good thing. For Spa, I honestly don't give a shit. Like Spa, Las Vegas, mate, wherever, Brazil, I don't care. Give us like any race. Australia, I don't mind. I'd love it at Australia because then I can go and see more racing. But yeah, the terms of the location, I don't think it matters too much. But as a fan's perspective, good thing. Teams, not so good. That's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in terms of the structure of the weekend, what's going on, and we can talk a bit about the teams. As I said before, Sauber is coming up in the Constructors. They're catching Williams. It's now only 14 points difference to Williams to the top of the midfield, and they're doing an exceptional job. And I think Sauber's going to be good, but they need to score points this weekend, both their drivers. Gab needs to start delivering a bit more probably in the races. He's shown that he has that one lap pace. And a lot of rookies do show this, that they've got the one lap pace, but putting it together in the race is proving to be a little bit more difficult. So hopefully Gab can start scoring a bit more points like Hulkenberg has, and then Sauber will just keep kicking. And then on the other side of the foot, Williams, are they going to get a result or not? Because they've been desperate recently and it doesn't seem like they're getting better. So that's going to be an exciting battle to see. Alpine's also been on the up. Gasly is doing an incredible job. And hopefully Colapinto can step up a bit more. But I don't know. I think because of the straight line speed, the Alpines might be at a bit of a disadvantage this weekend. Aston, I think Fernando will be good. Who else have we got? Ferrari, I just don't know how to say about them. I mean, like they're just so mediocre. Like they don't have, their peaks aren't high, but their troughs aren't like low either. So what can I say? I mean, it could be like podium contention, or it could be like they're struggling to get top 5. So we just don't know. So I'm going to be watching them closely this weekend, I reckon. McLaren, I think they'll be head and shoulders above the rest. Verstappen also, I think, will be good at this track. He's got the 4 in a row fastest laps, which I saw was tied for Senna as the only other driver to do it 4 years in a row. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, if Red Bull can bring a better car, then I'd love for Yuki to be up there. But I just, at this point, I'd no expectations whatsoever. So Mercedes, I think, will also be strong. But really, I think it's going to be sort of that McLaren and then maybe a Mercedes and a Red Bull. Sorry, not a Red Bull. Mercedes and Max fighting for those podium spots. I think Ferrari will just step down. And then I think we'll see Hulkenberg again. So especially the wet weather could chop it up. But in terms of the McLaren race, I mean, yes, they'll be the fastest car, but the intra-team battle going on is going to be intense. Like Piastri needs a better result. Lando's had some better momentum as of late, and Piastri's just showing signs of slipping down the order. So he needs a good result. He needs to show up strong, and he needs to be more consistent in the second half of the year. But yeah, Spa is going to be so exciting. It's going to be the first weekend for Lauren Meckies. Super excited for him. He seems like a gun. He seemed, I think he's done a great job at racing bulls. So I don't see why he wouldn't be just a great leader. I mean, I don't think he could do worse than Horner because I think he's just a good leader anyway. Like, I don't think he's going to take the team in a direction that's going to plummet them down the order. But I think he's just a great leader. So super excited for him. And we can talk more about the halfway point in another episode. But yeah, damn, we're halfway through. We're back. We're getting ready for this second half of the year. Like, what do you guys think is going to happen this weekend? I'll be curious to have a look, and we will be watching on, and I'll see you guys for the review. So have a good weekend, guys, and go McLaren. I'm joking. We'll see what happens, and we'll see you guys for the review. All right, take care.